Hello and welcome to the Design Operations Symposium 2022. We are delighted to see so many of you from across the globe at the event today. It is my pleasure to now hand over to our event chair, Jelana Wilson. Jelana is the head of design operations at Zendesk and has spent the last 6+ years pioneering the development of design and research operations practice at Zendesk, scaling the ops team from 1 to 22. Jelana, over to you.
Thank you, James. Hi, everyone. Welcome. We do have an exceptional lineup for you today. I am Jelana Wilson, your host for today's symposium. I'm really delighted to be your guide over the next few hours together. But before I tell you a little bit about myself, I'd love to learn a little bit about you all. I know we have people from all across the globe calling in for this event, so I'd love it if you'd use the chat and just let us know where you're calling in from and what are you looking forward to hearing or learning about today. Johnny's calling in from London. Hi, Jose, calling in from New York, Berlin, Phoenix, Denver, Sweden, India, Montreal, North Carolina, Chattanooga, Turkey. Wow, awesome. I'm calling in myself from San Francisco, California, where the sun is just starting to rise. Happy to see you all. Keep coming on in. Would love to know, what you're interested in learning today, what you're here for. Perhaps it's just getting to know other operations, folks like yourself or leaders, peers, meeting new people. This is a great place to do it. Please feel free to use the chat for sure and keep it coming. Learning more about design ops maturity curve, scaling design ops, more folks from London. Awesome. Super, super great that you're all here. Love that we have folks calling in from everywhere. So good evening, good morning, good afternoon. I will start just a little bit by introducing myself. I do currently lead design operations at Zendesk. And I started the team here over 7 years ago. I just celebrated 7 years. So like many of you, I started as a design ops team of one. And over the last 7 years, I've really been lucky enough, and I don't take this for granted, that we now have a practice at Zendesk of 22 people strong, including interns. Our design operations team spans across product design and brand creative, supporting the needs of our entire design community here at Zendesk, and bringing joy, of course, and a listening ear as we do it. So I'm really lucky to be part of this amazing group of operations specialists who really just care so much for the design teams they sit on and the work that they do, even the invisible work. And we all know there's so much of that. And I realize not everyone here shares my story of being part of a somewhat mature design ops team. Some of you are simply here, you're curious about design ops, if this might be the right time for you to implement this type of role or team at your company. Some of you might be a design ops team of one and starting to feel really pretty stretched thin with your list of growing responsibilities. Some of you might be straddling roles. Perhaps you were hired on as a designer or content strategist or researcher or design lead, but you have also been showing up as design ops for your team. And if you're feeling the tension of straddling those two roles and sets of priorities, imagine you're probably at the point where you're exploring what steps do you need to take to make the transition fully into design ops. Maybe you're part of one of our adjacent ops teams like creative operations, research operations, or video or photo studio operations. Those tracks are also going on today. So I recognize that this is just an array of people coming together to learn a little bit more, to meet one another, to really challenge each other in design ops. So welcome to all of you. However you're showing up today at this conference or whatever your background is, I want to encourage you to keep showing up. Keep showing up at events just like this. These are a great way to meet others, hear learnings from folks who have tried and failed at some things, that are eager to share their learnings. Events like these are super valuable, also through your local community groups. I really encourage you to check those out. Two of which are our partners here today. Design Ops Assembly has local chapters all over the world. I'm the chapter lead for the one here in San Francisco. As well, LATAM Design Ops Community is another partner in this community. So interesting. It was created to share design ops content in all countries in the LATAM region. So really encourage you to check these two out. Don't stop there. There's really several other design ops communities, events, resources all around the world. So we've made a lot of progress over the last few years as we've really tried to formalize and establish design ops as a practice, but there's still so much conversation to be had and discoveries to be made. So I'm excited you all are here today to join the conversation. Thank you to you all for joining us this bumper to bumper celebration for all things creative design and photo studio ops. Feel free to pop in and out as you see sessions that really interest you today and the other tracks as well. And also just thank you to our sponsors for supporting the events. You can visit them throughout the conference via the exhibition tab to learn more. So now I just want to go over a few housekeeping items before I kick it off to Jaime. You can find all the live sessions in the agenda tab. And remember, your registration includes access to the Festival of Creative Operations, Photo Studio Operations Forum 2. So during the sessions, we encourage you to chat with fellow attendees, make the most of our expert lineup by submitting your questions. We'll have Q&A at the end of every session. So that's on the right hand of your screen. And you can also use the chat tab or Design Ops Symposium hashtag on socials to get the conversation going. Let's be sure to check out the lounge tab throughout the event for real-time networking with industry peers and the competitions tab to win some great prizes. And then if at any point during the event you need assistance from the Henry Stewart team, if you'll just use the chat bot on the bottom right of your screen. So now on with the show. I'm delighted to introduce our keynote speaker, Jaime Cabrera from Meta. Jaime's a seasoned leader with a multifaceted background from analytics to design. She currently leads design operations for Facebook. She lives in New Jersey with her husband and kids and is a proud and active mentor in supporting women in technology and women in the workforce, as well as a devotion for diversity. So let's welcome Jaime, everyone.
Hello, everyone. Super excited to be here. Thank you, Jillian, for such a nice introduction. I will be sharing my screen to talk with you some fun stuff. And I didn't realize until today that I was your first speaker, so I'm super stoked. I wish I had some nice music to get the party started in typical Meta fashion. Give me 1 second. So we are live. Jillian, can you give me a thumbs up if we could see the screen? Awesome. Okay, so hello. Thank you for joining me today. My name is Jaime. I'm excited to be here to talk with you about myself and some stuff. So let's get into it. So today I will walk you through a little bit about me, my professional journey, my philosophies, and then we'll dive deep into how environmental maturity plays a factor in design ops. This is a topic that is super interesting right now as companies continue to evolve in the space, and it's caught my eye and interest over the past year, and I've been really intrigued into the information. So I'm excited to share with you guys on some of the stuff that I found. So first, a little bit about me. I'm a seasoned leader with over 15 years of experience, 12 of which I manage teams, a variety of sizes, levels, and specialties. I have a passion for beautiful science. I am an analyst by trade and enjoy using data to approach and solve a problem. I'm an artist with a specialty in visual and systematic design. I'm an operations guru at heart and love finding efficiencies, and I'm humanistic. As Jillian mentioned, I seek ways to support diversity, accessibility, and mentorship in both my work and personal life. So I started my journey as an analyst who moved into product design. So it was a pretty natural fit for me to find a home in design operations. I most recently led design teams at AOL, Verizon, Yahoo, and I'm currently at Meta with the Facebook app. Some of the most challenging but invigorating pieces of work I had the opportunity to be a part of, leading the discovery to build of AIG's operating committee reporting dashboard, building and scaling the data visualization offering and team at AOL across 14 products, initiating a first of its kind design ops team at Verizon, and leading the design system team for Yahoo, which had the opportunity to drive the Yahoo rebrand in early 2022. My philosophy is pretty simple. I believe in grit and grace. Within the design operations field, I find these two guiding principles shine because we are often combated with a resistance at every single turn while continuously compelled to find ways to bring our stakeholders along for the journey. One of my favorite quotes from Chris Morris is grit is having the courage to push through no matter what the obstacles are because it's worth it. And I truly believe design ops is usually worth it. So let's dive in. Environment dictates our outcomes every single time. My journey has given me the opportunity to work within a variety of environments, which gives me a unique perspective and clarity on how important it is to understand our environment in order to progress in our agenda. So let's walk through some definitions. So what is business maturity? One of the most important components of environment is maturity. So let's start at the top, business maturity. There is a natural evolution that occurs with a business as they progress from infancy to full maturity. And we have to keep in mind that evolution is not concrete. Some companies, most even, don't ever reach full maturity. And maturity is often calibrated by way of strategy, organization, systems, and management. So let's bring it closer to home. Similarly measured, design maturity is the extent to which businesses incorporate design practices into their overall systems. So let's go deep into the design maturity data. So according to Envision, who have been the pioneers in design maturity and have conducted the largest design maturity study to date, companies with high design maturity see cost savings, revenue gains, and brand and market position improvements as a result of their efforts. So what's the bottom line? According to the data, most companies are not business nor design mature. So if we break out the design ops from the maturity model, we can deduce that most companies have limited, if any, design ops maturity. Envision's study found 41% of companies fell into their level 1 category, meaning they lack things like UXR, design systems, design strategy, and design operations altogether. And remarkably, only 5% of companies fell into their level 5 category, meaning they have all the bells and whistles of a successful design org. It is no surprise that design operations even hit the map until level 3 on their model, and that is in its infancy stage of design ops. And only 38% of companies fell into their level 3 or above. So at our deepest layer of data, the Nielsen Norman Group conducted a survey across 557 design practitioners and found most companies had very low design ops maturity, with most not having specific design ops roles. More so, 44% of responders indicated they have a lack of knowledge or understanding of what design ops even does. So taking a step back for a second, while program management, and even some would argue design program management, may have been around for some time, design operations as a strategic partner is still a pioneer phase. And because of this, I found it often crucial to stick to the foundations of design operations and recognize each and every environment may yield a different solution of process or system. So given all the data we just went through, how does one even get started? A good first step is to run discovery on your current environment. Speak with your stakeholders, understand what success looks like in order to plug in what design operations can offer. Once your discovery is complete, you can overlay a breadth or depth analysis. Does this environment require or allow the design ops to go deep, be part of the product design programs or projects? Or does the environment require just breadth? So top-down solutions like tracking, reporting, for example. Or could it be a mix of both? The more we understand our current state, the more we can adjust our offering to support and be successful. So what are some of the design ops foundations I mentioned earlier? So my philosophy is to avoid recreating the wheel. I find following established market foundations allows a point of reference when working with more resistant stakeholders. I generally use the how we work together, how we get work done, and how we create impact model because it structures offerings in its very digestible manner. So how we work together often includes things like org structure, roles and responsibilities, rhythms of business, hiring, and people ops. That Norman Group survey I mentioned earlier reported that only 18% of those were activities seen. If we look at the how we get work done bucket, such things like process, tools, portfolio management, design systems, asset management, estimation and allocation, that Norman Group found that only 20% reported activities within this group. And finally, how we create impact, design metrics, reporting, success stories, playbooks, and education. That Norman Group found that only 30% of participants reported activities within this group. And it's no surprise to me, most of those activities actually related to design education. So things like conferences, things like forums, the budgets that relate to those things, not necessarily things like design metrics and reporting and putting and curating playbooks, things like that. So once we overlay what success looks like onto the design ops offering, it allows us to build a clear prioritization on our first steps, as well as the ability to state the problem from our stakeholders and a clear proposed solution or offering, thus giving us a purpose and meaning in design operations. So some techniques or artifacts that emphasize the design ops purpose in a more often than not or low mature environment are key to our success with stakeholder resistance, with the lack of maturity, with all of those complicated things that we're climbing up a mountain, that boulders are coming out to us. One of the most frequently asked questions I receive is what design ops does. At every single environment I've ever been introduced to, the question I get is, what does a design ops do? How do I use design ops? What's their purpose? What are your DPMs or data scientists? What do they offer me? So because of that, I have one example on the left here that I use a lot. It's called, I call it the do's and don'ts list. A document like this allows for a quick reference point on partner boundaries. I value this article in an environment where you may be working with stakeholders who have never worked with design ops before, stakeholders who may have a variety of working relationships with design ops. Maybe they actually had design ops on their team directly reporting to them, or they've had partner teams. So definitely different environments need guidance. Maybe you have a more junior resource who may need some guidance or an artifact to help them guide their stakeholders in proper direction related to what the design ops offering is. It's really important to keep in mind that this artifact may look very different in the context of each individual environment. For example, mine, I have probably 6 versions, depending on the different teams I've had in the past, all related to how we deduced what our offering was for those specific environments. This also keeps the word menu at bay. For those in the service business or agency business, the word menu is often alluded to what your offering list is. While I personally like the word menu because it offers me very clear lines of responsibility, especially as you're building more of the strategic perspective from a design ops lens, this word is often taken with negative connotation, i.e. we are not a service org, rather we're a partner org. So I do tend to avoid this word, and a document like this allows us to remove ourselves from menu and focus on the do's and the don'ts of our work list. The second tool is reporting. I mentioned I started my career as an analyst who moved into visual design. So curating opulent visuals to tell the data story brings stakeholders along for the journey while having an often mutual shared success. So I've coined this in my teams in the past as design science within the design operations org. So the report that you see here on the right, which is all fake data, it's just an illustration, for example, is the progression on moving to a more organized and efficient Figma structure. This report can call attention to areas exceeding, areas who may need additional support, those not participating, similar to like a gamification model, as well as emphasizing the size of the effort when it succeeds to leadership. So it's an incredible success to have over 300 designers, design managers, and design directors moving and navigating over 6,000 files, for example. I often use these reports for both business objectives, as well as to call attention to team success directly related to things not or outside business objectives. One of the most exciting things I got introduced to when I first joined Meta was the thanks portal. The Facebook Meta environment encourages us to thank our peers and leaders for their support. To add, they've built this very cool custom database that holds all of the thanks data for management. So curating a visual to represent my team's thanks was a priority for me, giving them an opportunity to see their hard work. Building a visual that shows leadership, the quantity, the breadth, and frequency calls attention to not only the success of the team, but also the success of the thanks tool in itself and how valuable it could be to our portfolio of tools. The use of reports are not only for one-offs, but I tend to leverage these visuals for general cadence reports as well. The more we can tell our story with the data, the more purpose we can bring to our design ops community, and the more we can show our success and remove the resistance that we often feel. And that's a wrap for me. So I appreciate you guys taking the time with me today. I enjoyed sharing a bit about my journey and philosophies with you, along with going deep in the data of business, design and design ops maturity, or lack thereof in most cases, and how the design ops foundations can help us build purpose for our community and bring us to a new layer as a partner, a strategic partner in most cases. And I am open for all questions.
Thank you so much, Jaime. Please feel free to pop in some questions to the Q&A tab to the right of the chat tab. To get us started, Jaime, you mentioned this. I loved your framework for how to really position, design ops as a necessary function. And I think many of us have faced that challenge of just even representing the idea that we need design ops, that we would be better with design ops. So once you have that, that initial buy-in for the value of design ops, what it could bring to the org, perhaps, you were then hired to fulfill that role, that need. How do you then kind of take that next step and convince leadership that there's a case or a need for more than one design operations specialist? Because I think so many people make it past that first hurdle and are able to really prove the value and speak to it, and they have the team charter ready and all of those foundational elements. But then it's like, okay, I can't do everything myself. And so but they feel a little bit stuck in that, like, okay, am I just gonna, stay a team of one forever? Or how do I really make the case or the argument for the need for not just maybe one or two, but a significant, group that needs to support this effort? So how have you found success kind of, running towards that second hurdle?
Yeah. So I'll start with first, some companies will never get there. So I would say find grace in your journey, because you may be up against a hill that will never allow you to get to the other side. And that is just a reality of an environment. One of the techniques I've often used is a capacity model. So taking a look at, and I lean on the foundations a lot because it allows stakeholders to find a digestible manner in the operational, like the design ops function. So I take a look at the foundations and I run a capacity model on, if I were given X, Y, Z resource, this is what I would be able to produce. And I never really approached this conversation without some initial successes, such as we were able to restructure Figma, for example, just because I had it on the screen in the past slide. And that allowed me to gain 10% increased production on my design team. So in order to get maybe 15 increased production on my design team, here are 5 things I can do. But in order to do those 5 things, I would extend myself to 150 capacity, which wouldn't allow for those things to be done correctly. And so finding ways to talk through capacity as it relates to tactical and actual output items has been the most successful ways of working for how I've navigated those types of things. So really finding a capacity model to what you're trying to achieve, and then just also finding grace that it may not be a priority for your stakeholders. So if that doesn't work, then maybe find what your stakeholders are really important, like what matters most to them. I.e., your stakeholder may have an objective from the top down saying they need to understand, they need to be quicker on a release date, right? So that's a velocity question. How do I get to a quicker velocity on all efforts, right? If I need to understand how to get to quicker velocity, I need to build a database to understand what's in my current portfolio. I need to understand, okay, out of a database, how do I build reporting and structuring to help me get the velocity question? And then you start stemming. Those are all very tactical operational offerings. So if the end goal is for your stakeholder to understand velocity because they want to increase their production, then we break that down into tactical operational functions and make them see that they need to build capacity in order to get there. But again, I circle back on that. Sometimes your resistance is just because the business is not ready for it. And that's also okay. And that gives you a time to pause and figure out what's next for you, because maybe it's not the right space if you want to continue to progress.
Absolutely. Yes. Aman is asking, how do you go about measuring the impact that design ops has had in your organization?
This is my favorite question because as an analyst, I lean into this area a lot. I also struggle in this area because often when you're in a design community, data is not the first thought of our partners. For the most part, most of them don't come from analytical backgrounds. Most of them, a lot of our design ops partners and peers, et cetera, actually were designers. I find a lot of the times they're designers and they just find a really strong interest in building efficiency. So from an impact perspective, I use my slick sheets. I'm a big one pager from a slick sheet perspective, and the Figma report is a great example. We had a program of work that we were rolling out a new efficient model for how we structure Figma because we had no structure. And so for like org leaders or heads of groups, they couldn't find files, reviews were a mess. So I take a look at the messy box, I put it on paper, and then I put it through like a kaleidoscope, if you will, and the output is a much cleaner, efficient model. But I always use the slick sheet model. So what was the program? What were our outputs and how fast and success did we get there? And I present in very much that slick sheet visual perspective.
There's a lot of questions in the chat about, persuading stakeholders of the value of design ops. This is another one I want to just piggyback onto the last one. From Chaya asks, do you find there's a difference in persuading stakeholders of the value of design ops depending on the scale of the org? So what helped in each context?
Yes. So I would say the breadth and depth conversation is key to environmental stakeholder decisioning. So breadth, i.e., you have your top-down things, right? Often stakeholders in a smaller community can digest the breadth because they see you valuable at maybe a 1 to 20 designer like ratio, right? And breadth allows you to do things that are more like top-down reporting, like task management. That is something from a foundation perspective that stakeholders often see as more valuable versus like when you're in a larger company, they find more value in potentially a 1 to 5 model where design program managers are actually at the ground level. But what I've seen is a lot more success at the the breath model versus the other one that I can't think of at the moment. Because the problem is when you talk about like economy state, again, that's a piece of the environment. All these things that kind of influence our environment, the depth level starts to get more, do we really need that? Like, you know, is that something that's really important? And so I always say, if you're in a difficult environment with a lot of resistance, start at the breath model. So start where you can bring things from the top down at more of like a 1-to-20 ratio to your design partners, and then start building acumen to then prove case to bring it down to the depth level. I hope I answered that question.
Yeah, I agree with exactly what you said. I think proving it out over time, and then also having your stakeholders and your leadership that are able to witness the value of design ops at the depth level to be able to then help you champion for more, you know, growth on the team or roles like that.
Yeah, use a proof of concept example for sure.
100% speaks for itself most times. Johnny asks, would love to hear your thoughts on cross-functional ops challenges, research ops, design ops, product ops, creative ops, etc. How you have either consolidated or coordinated those functions to maintain efficiency across one or all of the above?
Yeah, I laugh because I'd actually have every single environment. This one is one of the most messy. You have program managers, DPMs, TPMs, the variety of acronyms that equal some sort of operation person, and production managers, things like that. They often, if you take a look at like the menu, which I know most people hate, but they have very blurred lines. And I don't think, in every single environment I've been through, honestly, those lines are continued to be blurred, which makes things super messy. And the more we avoid the menu conversation, because we don't want to fall into, you know, that service model, the more those blurred lines will continue. So I actually have no solution for this personally, because I continue to still deal with this as, you know, mulling the situation out, even in my current environment. But I would just say continue to have those honest conversations and set like those roles and responsibilities at the beginning of a conversation, whether it's you're getting into a new program of work or you're starting up with a new team or whatever it is. You get the top stakeholders in the same room and have real clear and concise decisions and conversations related to each role, to bring everyone along for the journey versus trying to do things in silo. That is the technique I've used, even if like in the model of TPM versus DPM or whatever, things are blurred, at least in that setting, in that instance, things will be very clear in terms of TPM does this for us, DPM will do this for us. And that creates some lines of boundaries, which I've always used as a tool. But I think this is something our industry will continue to face. And I think we'll go through some evolutionary on it. I could see in the next 5 years, because there's just so many roles that are overlaying in a lot of ways.
Definitely. And there's seems to be an uptick in how companies are really starting to invest in operations roles, just in general, I feel like. So we're seeing more and more, which is wonderful, which is great, because I think that's really the force of, you know, what makes the company achieve their goals. And there's just and cross-functional alignment really, but it is like at our level, or at the, you know, operations folks, I think it is up to us to make sure there's clarity on roles and responsibilities and be able to articulate that to our stakeholders and leadership as well. All right, let's see. We have a couple more questions here in just about 5 more minutes. So Anastasia asks, would you recommend any additional literature or material that would be useful to design ops to become more efficient?
Ooh, efficient. Not off the top of my head. I would say, so the Envision model that I talked through today, the Envision study, they did a lot of research related to design ops as its own section. So there is some good material there. They do touch upon efficiency. But outside that, nothing at the top of my head. The Nielsen one didn't get deep enough to give you any real context. The other thing that I like to do, and maybe it's because I enjoy education, but I lean on the business cases, like the Harvard, the Yale, some of them have really good business cases on general operations. Like I would say most operational functions, any historical value we can gain from there, because design ops is really no different than finance ops or any of these functions that may have been around prior to us. Yes, the product or the offering might be different, but if you look at like even just billboard design in like PR back like decades ago, there was somebody who was organizing all the things to make that billboard, be beautiful and up in the sky. So I think like looking at business cases also helps me understand how historically it was done, because I don't think a lot has changed, especially how things can potentially relate to our field. But I would say those are the two things that come to mind.
Okay, Natasha asks, thank you for the great overview. Talking about design maturity, have you been able to demonstrate a link between a strong design ops function and innovation outputs? Asking because I'd like to demonstrate this in my current role.
So it's a great question, because you would think, I'm assuming the STEM is like, so you have a general bucket of work that's in your portfolio, and then you want to increase potential capacity towards a percentage towards innovation. So it's like, how do you adjust your capacity model to be potentially 70% portfolio work, which is standard, like practice of business, maintenance, whatever it is, foundation stuff, and then allow for maybe another percent to innovation? I would say the capacity model could support that argument, like building true capacity allocation model. Those are all things that design ops could offer to prove to stakeholders that you've created a capacity level for innovation in itself. And then in that conversation, you're proving some purpose there, right? Like you are creating I don't know if you have a portfolio management system, but like if you have a portfolio management system, you're building you have the ability to provide leadership with a view on, where your capacity is, and allows them to move things if they find a deprioritization on something and put it into innovation bucket. But I would say capacity and allocation are the first things that come to my head as it relates to finding value or purpose in what design ops could offer to something like innovation, if they're not on that depth level of being involved in the day-to-day. Yeah,
very well put. We're going to squeeze one more in the last 2 minutes. Jose's got a great question here. I feel like a lot of folks are probably needing to answer as well. So, historically, the forced choice has been do I hire a designer? Do I hire a developer? Now the question is, do I hire a designer or design ops person? So how do we effectively articulate this?
Yeah, this is a great question. And this goes back to, again, why environment is so important. So in my 5 or 6 different environments, I have been budgeted to design. I have been budgeted to product. And then most recently, I've been budgeted to, I'm still in design, but there's more of a budget related to design ops, which is almost probably not the case for most. So yes, you're going to get into a conversation where it's design versus design ops. It goes back to, I'm a very big analyst. So it goes back to math and like taking a look at the portfolio, take a look at the offerings, and see what the capacity of a new designer would bring as opposed to the capacity of a new design ops person. And the stakeholder somebody will have to make a decision on which is more prioritized. It goes back to all those conversations that all relate to you're building a very strong database to have the ability to answer all these questions. And it's really almost always related to your portfolio management, i.e. your task management system, where your resources are being spent, et cetera. And then that future state. So if I were to hire a new design ops person, this is what they would offer. If I hired a new designer, this is what they would offer. And then having those conversations around what would be more prioritized, right? And what would allow us to get to that next level faster. That's what I would say.
Absolutely. Jamie, this has been so great, just filled with lots of practical advice and frameworks and just helpful content. So thank you so much. And want to invite you all to our next sessions, and a big thank you to you, Jamie. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate it. And reach out if you have anything else on your mind.